Hello everybody and welcome to Michal's Cafe, clinic number 6. Today we're going to talk about how to prepare for a job interview on the inside and outside while on the virtual platforms. 6 months ago, 1 year ago, this topic would have been completely irrelevant, but today it is the hottest topic in the professional world, which is why I invited a guest, not just any guest. I invited the best guest. I invited Julianne Ortiz, Julie.
Hi everyone, it's so nice to be here tonight.
Yeah. She's an MBA student, my classmate at Stony Brook University, and she worked at the Career Center at Stony Brook University for a few years. She's a native Long Islander. She acquired her bachelor's at Stony Brook University as well in psychology, and she has a ton of experience, human services, brand marketing, digital marketing, recruitment, HR, customer service, and research. She, during the pandemic, actually was a part of interviews for over 150 students to help them craft their interviewing skills while working on the resume and as they were recruited for various jobs. In the Career Center specifically, Julie did digital marketing, email marketing, presentations, and career presentations. And besides her professional experience, she's actually been job hunting for the past few months ever since the pandemic started, and she just landed on a job, so congratulations, Julie. So no perfect person to tell us about how difficult it is to find a job during such pressing times. And a fun fact about Julie, she can juggle. That's not that impressive, but she can juggle while being on a unicycle, so that's pretty cool. Before the clinic today, I just want to tell you how we're going to do it. We're going to start with about 10 minutes of questions that I asked Julie. The hottest questions about how to prepare for a job interview in the platform. Then we're going to start with about 10 more minutes of me being the potential employee and Julie being the recruiter. So she's going to ask me really tough questions, and I'm going to do my best answering them, and then she will analyze them to you and say how my answers could have been better. In the last 10 or so minutes, I'll leave it up to you. You can ask Julie questions. For example, what are good questions that you can ask an employee? So, are you guys ready? Let's get started. How do you think the recruitment process have changed since everything transferred from in-person to online?
Yeah, that is a very complex question, just because obviously every company is so different. The recruiting space has really changed very differently for large companies versus smaller companies. A lot of students in technology and engineering, they're looking at larger companies. So for them, recruiting has changed in the way we recruit, which is, a lot of it is, the majority of it is being done online now, even though a lot of companies are transitioning to being in person again. I can speak from my experience in helping interview students in, way back in May, which seems like a lifetime ago, interviewing all those students and helping be a part of the interview process for 100 plus students. I think the biggest change on the student side is the lack of professionality, and that's not so much the student's fault, it's just different. And so that's something that I want to kind of bring up a few times today, is how we can retain our professional attitude, even though we're sitting at home and we're doing our homework in our pajamas in our bed, and that might not be so different from commuting. But if you lived on campus and you're used to going to classes and everything, having everything be at home it's just a switch. And so, the semester is already halfway over for, most students. And so they're already kind of used to that now, but I want to take us out of that headspace and make sure that we're fostering an environment for you to be recruited and for you to be a top applicant and a top interviewer for companies.
I remember that when I was an undergrad and I walked into these prepare for a job interview, we practiced how to handshake and we practiced our elevator speech. But still, what do you think are some benefits, some pros to the online recruitment versus in person?
A really great thing for students is there's no transportation to interviews anymore. I remember when I was a sophomore, I interviewed for a position. I didn't have a car and there were no train stations near there. So I had to get a family member to drive me to the interview, which is crazy for a student, you know? But now there's no transportation, so you don't have to worry. You can finish your class at 3 o'clock and go to an interview at 3:01, you know, which is just so great. And you have so much more flexibility in your schedule. The other great thing is that so many positions are remote now. And so you don't just have to apply to positions that are in your direct area. You're not limited to your direct, you know, tri-state area. You can live on the East Coast and apply for jobs on the West Coast and actually work at those places. And a lot of jobs are remote right now, and then they're going to be in person. So you can think about, you have time to, you know, kind of see if you would want to relocate or if you want to look for just remote jobs that are going to stay remote. But either way, you have so many more options now.
What are the two types of interviews?
So the two main types of interviews that you're probably going to encounter are going to be behavioral interviews and technical interviews. Behavioral interviews are the interview that everybody goes through. That is the interview where they ask, you know, what are your strengths and weaknesses and why do you want to work for us? Those are kind of those behavioral interviews. Those are the very soft skill focused questions. Technical interviews are more for, you know, technical type positions. Those are for positions where you have to know programs and coding and things like that, which is, you know, all of you women. So for those technical interviews, it's a little bit of a different preparation process. Those are more specifically focused on hard skills, but you can't forget about your soft skills.
So what would be your tip as to best prepare for a technical interview?
Well, specifically for women, I don't want you to sell yourself short. A big problem with Stony Brook students in general is getting them to express their accomplishments. And that's a problem with women in general too. There's a difference between being modest and not, you know, showing your best self. There's a way to be confident without being brazen. You don't want to lie. And that sounds like, of course, I wouldn't lie in an interview, but sometimes, you know, we might find ourselves pushing the bounds. If they say, do you know this program? You might say, oh yeah, I know it really well. If you don't know a program super well, be honest about that and just say, oh, I'm not super familiar with it, but I took a class in it and, you know, I'm going to take another class next semester. Or, you know, I have a workshop coming up that I'm going to go to so that I can strengthen my skills. You know, so be honest with them. They appreciate that so much more. Also, places might ask you in a technical interview to take a sort of assessment test. And a really important thing you can do to help yourself and to show that you know what you're talking about to an interviewer is to always double check. So if you are asked to do something, let's say you're asked to do something in code, always say, you know, let me see if I understand you. And say the question back to them in a simpler way. This does two things. One, it ensures that you are going to do the right thing. You're going to give them the right answer. And two, it shows them a little bit of your managerial skills. It shows them that you can take a complex, you know, thing and you can take it, break it down and make it a little bit simpler. This is a really important skill, especially in people-facing roles. And even in roles where you're not facing people all the time, you're just talking to an internal team. You still need to know how to describe things so that people understand. It's great to know all the technical jargon, but it's even better to know how to explain that technical jargon. So it's kind of like that. I don't know if this is a common thing. I heard this when I was in high school. It's like a line from a movie that said, explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. You know, you kind of want to be able to do that.
So now that we covered how to practice for a technical interview, what are some tips that you have, Julie, for students to complete before an interview?
So before the interview and before you even apply, a really great tip for right now, especially for larger companies, is to pay attention to the job description. Many times people go to just the qualifications and they'll see if they're qualified and then they'll just say, yep, easy apply on LinkedIn. I'm just going to send my resume out. That is, you're just sending your resume into a black hole if you do that. You need to tailor your resume to each industry that you're applying for. And even better, each job that you're applying for, although that's a lot. So you might want to, make sure that you're really applying for the jobs that you really think that you're right for and that you have a passion for, which is, the better job anyway. So what I mean by tailoring your resume, go through that job description, look at what types of phrases they're using, what languages are they talking about, what type of skills are they looking for? Are they looking for basic? Are they looking for intermediate? And you want to put those words on your resume because when you're applying, especially to larger companies, those companies are often using resume scanners. And let's say a company wants you to know, I have such limited knowledge on coding languages, but I'll say Python. If you don't have Python, like the word Python on your resume, it doesn't matter if you are, a Python pro. It doesn't matter how well you know it. If it's not on your resume, they might just skip over you. So that's why it's so important. It's not necessarily what you know, it's how you explain what you know. So please, please, please double check your resume before you're sending them out to jobs, because I don't want them to skip over you just because you missed telling a piece of your story.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of, the before the interview. But behavioral interviews, the best thing you can do for yourself before an interview, after you've gotten past the initial phase, is practice. Look up questions on the Stony Brook career site website, and look up their questions that are common for behavioral interviews and technical interviews. It can't hurt to look at more questions. You're never going to come across all the questions that they have to offer. A lot of companies like to pride themselves on finding, a very nuanced question that that people haven't heard before. So you just have to know essentially the outline of what you're going to say. And that means knowing yourself really well. So when it comes down to it, a behavioral interview is you're going to be most successful when you know yourself better than you know anything else. Because if you do, then you'll know the answer to every single question they could ever ask you.
Yeah. So just to emphasize what Julie said, when it comes to keywords, if I'll take it to my world as an MBA student, and when I'm looking at the job description and I see leadership skills, teamwork, I better put these two words on my resume. I better put leadership and teamwork, because otherwise when I'm applying and I'm sending my resume in, there's a scanner and it goes through. And if these two words are not on there, these two keywords are not on my resume, like Julie said, it's just going to get tossed. So keywords and practicing questions. Like Julie said, you're never going to come through all the questions. I remember before I applied for my master's degree, I actually wanted to be a travel agent. And I remember going through this extensive interview of like 4 steps, 4 times that I got called in. And I killed it. I did so well. I really wanted this job. And then I had the final interview with my personal manager, we'll say it like that. And he asked me a really simple question that I did not have an answer to. And it got me so stuck. The question was, where do you see yourself in 10 years? It's such a simple question, but yet because I didn't prepare myself, I'm like, 10 years? What are you talking about? Like, I'm 23 years old. I don't know. Like, where do I see myself in 10 years? But now I kind of know how to manipulate it into, even though I obviously don't have a clear plan, and I doubt anyone here knows where you're going to be in 10 years. I knew what to answer and how to project my confidence and knowing that I am in control and I am spending some time thinking about it. So since we mentioned confidence, what is your best tip for confidence demonstration? And the reason why I'm asking that is because wise women are brilliant. I am so lucky to be working with them, but in so many cases, they're so shy. Shy when it comes to speaking up, when it comes to projecting your voice, when it comes to just demonstrating yourself in the best way possible. So what is your tip for confidence on Zoom?
Yeah, absolutely. So I completely agree with you. Wise women are brilliant, and you're in this program for a reason. And I know that some people suffer with imposter syndrome and say, like, oh, I just got this by chance, or I just made it to the interview because I got lucky. No, you made it to the interview because you are so incredibly smart and talented and they want you. So overcoming that imposter syndrome is the first step. And then we can continue, but that is some internal work that you have to do. But just saying to yourself, I deserve this. I am here for a reason. I didn't get lucky. This isn't just like my one shot. You're brilliant, obviously. So that is the first step, is understanding that you deserve a place. You deserve a seat at the table is the first step. So secondly, is body language. So eye contact. This has been a rule forever, in job interviewing, and it's no different now. Don't use the digital space. Don't use the fact that your picture is up on the screen as a mirror. Please don't look at yourself. You're just gonna, pick apart the things that you see, like, oh, is my shirt wrinkled? Is my hair flat enough? Or, you're just gonna be worrying about that. So don't use it as a mirror. Eye contact, look directly into the camera or look at the interviewer as if you were looking at them in person, and it'll really help you in that way. And also watch what you're doing with your hands. A lot of people that have long hair tend to play with their hair, or they'll kind of smooth it out, put it behind their ears. Don't touch your hair. And if you happen to have long hair, don't wear it in front of you can wear your hair however you would like. However you want to wear your hair is totally fine. But please don't wear your hair in a way that makes it the focal point of your own attention. So this means, are you flipping your hair all the time because your bangs are in the way, or you put hair in front of your face? Do you have strands of hair that you keep having to move over? That's not good, because it's distracting, you from being your best self and, keeping your focus on the interview, because now your focus is on your hair. So that's basically all I have to say about hair. I know it's a big topic. People have a lot of opinions on it, but really wear it however you want. Just don't let it distract you. And mind what you're doing with your hands in the other sense. I talk a lot with my hands, obviously, but if you don't know what to do with your hands and you're kind of a fidgety person, then just fold your hands and put them on the table, or take notes. That's another great thing to do. But on Zoom, when you're taking notes, you have to let people know. Otherwise, it looks like you're playing on your phone. So if you are about to start a job interview, or they say, all right, let me tell you a little about the position, just say quickly, okay, well, I have my notepad here. I'm going to take some notes, because that avoids the whole, oh, well, I'm on my phone and I'm just going to play on my phone until you're done talking, because sometimes it can look like that. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be a super confident person to appear confident. This is something I think people forget or don't realize. You don't have to, that doesn't have to be a trait to describe you. People are great because they are individualistic. You're great just the way you are, and you can still present yourself in the best light no matter what. So following the tips of eye contact, hair out of your face, making sure you know what you're doing with your hands, keeping your focus on the interviewer. These are all things you can do no matter what your personality is, to appear really confident in yourself and like you deserve to be here. Again, the biggest problem people have at Stony Brook is that they don't know how to convey how brilliant they are. And so that, paired with lack of self-confidence, it sets you up for disaster. And so you really do have to do a little bit of extra work before your interview, just to remind yourself of those things.
Yeah.
When I was interviewing students on Zoom, it just felt like some of them didn't want to be there. They had they would be interviewing on their phone. And that's fine, but you really want to keep your phone here and keep it at a straight angle. Some of them were interviewing like they were just playing on Snapchat, and so it didn't really convey what we wanted to see in a job candidate. And so all of these things said will help you to present your best self on Zoom.
Definitely. Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you already touched base on that, but can you share some do's and don'ts on a job interview?
Yeah, so I'm going to share 3 do's and don'ts for job interviews online. So 1, make sure your technology is working. I know nowadays people like to put stickers in front of their camera for privacy purposes, and that's totally fine. The problem comes when you shut your camera settings off or your microphone settings off on your phone or on your laptop, and then it comes to interview time and your camera isn't working, your microphone isn't working, and you have to restart your computer. Sometimes that happens where you can't change a setting right away. So make sure your technology is working beforehand. Maybe just call a friend on Zoom. Just let them tell you, okay, you sound great, or no, you sound kind of tinny, I can't really hear you. That's something that you can do for yourself. 2, make sure you're on time. This is the same as it was in person. So don't show up to the Zoom interview, a minute past or the minute of. Show up a few minutes before. And this includes preparing your technology. So if you have an interview at 7 p.m., don't, open your laptop at 6:55, because what happens if your battery's dead? What happens if you don't have internet? You have to prepare yourself. So leave enough time for something to go wrong, just so that nothing does. And 3, some people have a problem projecting on Zoom, and it is a little bit harder to hear people when they are further away, and the technology is in the way. And if you're a quiet person in general already, the interviewer might have a problem hearing you. The easiest thing you can do is quite literally just move your computer forward. Just bring it towards you so that you can just be closer to the microphone. If you find that you really have a problem speaking up, either wear a headset or something like that where the microphone is close to your face. You can do these simple little tricks to help yourself. Technology can be on your side. Now, what not to do, please don't have a messy background. Now, we see Michal has a bed in the background. That's totally fine. That works great, because this is where she is. We don't have home offices. We're students, we just don't have them. And so Michal's bed is fine in the background. What we don't want to see is a bed that's not made and has clothing all over it and is a mess and has dirty things on it. That's what we don't want to see. So a bed in the background is kind of a yes-no situation. Yes, if it's neat and tidy. No, if it's not. 2, don't wake up 2 seconds before your interview. The no travel time is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because you can now schedule interviews at times when you may not have been able to before. But it becomes a bad thing when you just kind of, rely on that fact and that, okay, I'll just turn my camera on in a second. This is not the time to have a PJ party. You don't want to show up to your interview like you actually just woke up. And I have interviewed people like that before, and it's very evident. You're not going to hide it. The best thing you can do to combat this is pretend you're leaving the house. I put on a dress and I may or may not have sweatpants on right now. You don't know that. So you can still wear sweatpants and you can wear your fuzzy slippers, but make sure everything that is, on camera is professional. So wear a nice top. If you like to do your makeup, then do your makeup. If you like to do your hair, then do your hair. Just make sure that you look neat, whether you have makeup on or not, or anything. And your background, I have a nice plain background here. It's nothing is noisy, and it's just my closet. I have a whole closet full of messy clothes back there, but you wouldn't know that because the closet is closed. So make sure that your background is neat. It doesn't have to be professional. We're still at home. Everyone knows that, but just make sure that it looks tidy. And the third thing is don't use Zoom as a mirror. And I mentioned this before, but I really just want to mention it again because it's also really evident when someone's talking to you and you're just going, and you're just, doing stuff like that. This happens with everybody. Everybody fixes their hair. Everybody fixes, whatever they're wearing. And it's very distracting to the interviewer. And again, you are distracting yourself. You are taking your attention away from the interview and all of the brilliant knowledge that you have and the answers you have to these questions. And you are taking little bits of your attention away thinking about each of these things. So if you have to, use the speaker view so that your face isn't as big as the interviewers. Little tricks like that can help.
the big $1,000,000 question. What to do if you lose connection in the middle of an interview?
This actually has happened to me before. It is not fun, but it will probably happen to you unless you live somewhere where you have 3 backup networks and an industrial, Wi-Fi router. It could even happen at Stony Brook. Sometimes the power goes out, sometimes the Wi-Fi goes out. It happens. So don't panic, because obviously the interviewer knows that something's going wrong with the Wi-Fi. The best thing you can do is, if you still have Wi-Fi, if it's come back on or you have 3G on your phone, email the interviewer just a quick something. You want to do it as quick as you can and just say, I apologize, the Wi-Fi, the video connection seems to have broken. Here's another link. And then send them a link to a different Zoom, or, just say like, my internet's back up, I'm ready when you are. Or if you don't have an internet connection, let's say your internet went down, your power's out, but you still want to continue the interview, you can still do that. If you can email them from your phone and say, I apologize, my Wi-Fi is out, but here's my phone number. Please call me as soon as you're ready to continue the interview. You can also do that. That's totally acceptable. We all know that technology fails sometimes, and Wi-Fi is very finicky, so don't panic. It's not the end of the world. Sometimes they'll just redo the interview depending at what point the interview was at. So definitely email them as soon as you can. Pay attention to your own email. Watch to see if they've sent you anything. And if all else fails, either call them or email them with your phone number and let them know that you are available.
Thank you so much for all of this information. It was super, super valued and useful. Let's switch positions. Let me be the interviewee.
So Michelle's going to be the interviewee and I am the interviewer. Mm-hmm. So this is not a reflection on Michelle. This is just a character she's playing. Michelle is, Michelle. So let's start. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Hi. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. So my name's Julie, and I'm going to be your interviewer today.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me.
Of course. Thank you. So are you ready to start?
Yeah, I'm ready when you are.
All right. So side note, just so everybody knows, we're going to be stopping after each question briefly to discuss, what went right, what went wrong. So back in. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Michelle.
About me. So my name is Michal. I am an MBA student, an MBA candidate, and will be graduating in December of 2020, so very soon. I am an international student from Israel, and I used to be on the swimming team. I used to be a collegiate swimmer for 5 years at Eastern Michigan for 4 years until I was injured, and then I completed my last year at Stony Brook University, and I'm looking forward to go into the world of marketing.
All right. So a few things to talk about that Michelle intentionally did. One, the eye contact. She was looking everywhere. Don't want to do that. Just keep your body still and sit up straight. I like to imagine that I am like a puppet and there's a string at the top of my head that's pulling me up. And so I cannot sit back. I know that sounds like, what are you talking about? But it does help, I promise. And then the second thing, Michelle was doing a lot of this. She had her hands in front of her face, and at some points I was struggling to hear what she was saying. Again, take your hands. If you don't know what to do with them, just clasp them and put them down and leave them like that. Because the worst thing you can do is, playing with your hands in front of your mouth, and so that the interviewer has trouble hearing you. And then Michelle, in telling me about herself, told me a lot about school. I happen to know that Michelle has a lot of other experiences and work experiences working with clients that would help her, but she failed to mention any of those experiences. She also said she's interested in the marketing world, but didn't mention anything about being interested in the position, how she found the position, any other interests she has within marketing. And so she gave me a really broad view in one sentence and took the rest of the time to talk about other stuff. It's important to talk about who you are, if you're a student, what your major is, But it's also important to talk about the experiences that kind of brought you to where you are today. And when I say experiences, I mean relevant experiences. Of course, I love to hear how Michal is a swimmer. I love hearing about that every time I do, but I want to hear about her marketing experience. So we'll continue. Michal, what is your greatest weakness?
Oh, wow. My greatest weakness. I think my greatest weakness is the fact that I'm very stubborn. And in many cases, I want to do something in a certain way, and I disagree with somebody else who wants to do it in a different way. And in many cases, it's just really challenging to convey why I think my way is the best, and avoid conflicts.
All right. So this is a question people often struggle with, and there is a simple answer to figuring out what you should say. But first off, Michal, with her body language again, she was playing with her hair a lot because it's kind of down and it was falling into her face. Again, with the eye contact and the hands in front of your face. And when she talked about her greatest weakness, she did the thing you're not supposed to do. And that is saying something that is a character trait, that is stagnant. You want to talk about something that is malleable, meaning it's something that's changeable within you. So when someone asks what your greatest weakness is, don't say well, the thing that a lot of people say is, oh, I'm a perfectionist. I always want everything to be done right. That's not a great answer. People know that that's just, your standard greatest weakness answer. But you also don't want to say, well, I hate working in teams. I've never liked it. And I know I will never like it. You don't want to say that either, because the way you're saying it sounds like it's never going to change. And if you can't work in teams, it's probably not going to be a great position for you no matter what. You want to say something that you can change. So for example, if someone asks what your greatest weakness is, you could say, well, I really have problems when I am looking at the details. I tend to be a little bit too detail oriented and get lost in there rather than seeing the big picture. But in my last position, or in my last internship, I worked on this a lot with my boss, and they said that I had a really big improvement in my project management skills. So it's something that I'm working on. Those are the key words. I'm working on it. And they want to hear how. So talk about your weakness, and then talk about how you're working on it, and give an example of a project that you did or a work experience that you had where you actually had tangible results of how you were working on this. Mm-hmm. That's the best way that you can answer that question. Yes. Next. So Michal, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
In 5 to 10 years, I think it's a really difficult answer, because I'm still really young and there's so much I want to do, and I didn't really spend any time thinking about where I want to be in 5 to 10 years. But I think that I want to start a family. I want to be really good at what I do. I want to wake up every day feeling valuable and feeling accomplished. So I always want to learn new things. I definitely want to be in marketing, and I want to be happy with what I do and feel content.
So part of that answer was great. Michal talked about growth. She talked about wanting to stay in her field, which hopefully is the field of the company that you're interviewing with. Those were really great things to say. At the beginning, she struggled a little bit and was kind of stalling. And that was very evident, saying, oh, that's a good question. Let me think about that a little bit. And that's fine if you're being genuine. Sometimes we just don't know the response. What I want to say about this question is, it is tough to know what you're going to do in 5 to 10 years. You want to give a response that leaves the option open for you to be still working at this company. So if you say, oh, in 5 to 10 years, I want to be backpacking through Europe and I'm never going to look back. And I want to save up all my money that I make, and then I want to abruptly leave my company, and I want to start life over again in Albania. Great plan if that's your plan. but that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear you saying something similar to what Michal said, which was, I want to remain in my current field. I want to learn all that I can. I want to grow in my company. Things like that are great things to say. And you can talk about personal goals that you have, but that should not be the only thing that you're talking about. That can kind of be mixed in there a little bit delicately, but make sure that you are always leaving yourself open to still work at this company at whatever point they tell you, whether it's 3, 5, 10 years. And do you have any questions for me?
Yes, I do have a question for you. What is your idea of a really good employee?
All right, that is a great question to ask. Asking what a great employee looks like, what the model employee looks like, that's a really good thing to know, because that tells you a little bit about what traits someone should have who's interviewing for that position. So that's a really great thing to ask somebody. If you don't know the answer to a question, whether it be a technical interview or a behavioral interview, or even a situational interview, those are interviews where people say, tell me about a time when this happened. Which a lot of companies use. It's STAR method. Look that up a little bit later. But situational interviews are also common. If you don't know the answer to a question, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to vamp forever. What you can do is, if you don't know the answer at all, and you don't even have something remotely relevant to say, you can say, that's a really great question, and I actually hadn't thought about that before. I would love to answer that for you. Could I send you an email later today with my response? That, you can kind of change it into whatever your style of speech is. But in general, that's a great thing to say, because you're not always going to know the answers. In your position, you're not always going to know the answers either. And so this shows them that you can handle yourself in positions that are stressful. And when you're in a position where you just don't know what to do, it shows that, you are not just closed off, and you're not just going to make up an answer, because that's bad. That says, what does that say about this person as an employee? Are they just going to make stuff up when they don't know the answer?
Yeah.
So that's a great.
Don't forget to follow up. So if you say you're going to send an email, make sure you do.
Absolutely. And follow up within the range that you set. This goes for everything. This goes for if a company sends you a screening survey, take it right away. Take it as soon as you can. If they send it to you on a Monday and they say it's due on a Friday, this is not the same type of thing as when you get assigned homework on Monday and it's due on Friday. You could do that at Thursday at 11:50 p.m. Yeah. That's your business. That's totally your business. This, they will see when you finish. So start it and finish it as soon as possible. Also, send a thank you letter. I think the statistic is like 10% of people send thank you letters to their interviewers, which is crazy, because you're totally in control of that. And if you don't know how to do that, please go to the Stony Brook Career Center website. They have examples of what you can say. Always, always send a thank you letter to any interviewer you have. If you have more than one, send them individually, send them together. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that you say something, because that will put you above other candidates.
Down to the last part. So here is some time for questions from you. I'll warm you up. What about accessories? You talked about hair, but what about accessories and jewelry and engagement rings, etc.?
So I think Coco Chanel said it best when she, and I'm paraphrasing here, before you leave the house, take something off. So this is not a night out on the town. This is an interview. They want to see how you are when you attempt to dress professionally. So you want to keep it simple, but neat and tidy. So you can absolutely express yourself with whatever color palette you like, however you like to do your hair and makeup, but understand that wherever you're interviewing, whatever the culture is of that company, you have to take that into account. So if you're interviewing at a very small law firm to be a data analyst, they're probably going to have a more professional vibe to their company. as compared to maybe a startup where people wear jeans and everyone has a different color hair, so you have to, that's where your research comes in. Researching the culture of the company beforehand is so important if you're questioning what you should be wearing during the interview. But in general, as a rule of thumb, more professional is always 100% of the time always better than less professional.
Actually working on applications for graduate school, so it's a little bit different. I was wondering though, in terms of jobs, I don't know, I know in terms of employers, they have things that they're not allowed to ask about. Like they very much have to stick to the script. So do you think they would ask about like a potential employee's pandemic response or anything like that? Or is that something that they might bring up as well in terms of, because I know we can obviously ask them about their company and what they've done, but I don't know if that's something that we should also expect.
So you want to know if they can ask about what you have been doing in response to the pandemic?
Yeah, like I guess in terms of, adaptability or things like that, or how like our own roles have adjusted.
So they can ask in general. That's been asked a few times where they'll say, or an interviewer will say, how have you been doing during the pandemic? Or how have you been spending your time? And to that, you don't want to say nothing. I've been vegging out, watching Netflix, and I've been binge watching The Haunting of Bly Manor. It's great. Have you seen it? You don't want to do that. While that sounds nice in connecting with somebody, that's more of a networking thing rather than an interviewing thing. So talking about Netflix shows definitely has its like time and place, but that's more for the casual networking side. When you're talking about pandemic response, if someone asks you about that, it's important to be honest. You don't want to say, oh, well, I was overseas and I was developing a vaccine. You don't want to say anything too crazy, but you don't want to say that you did nothing. So I would talk about, you're all students. Talk about how classes have been. Talk about how your professors have been and any special projects that you've started or continued. That shows a lot of perseverance, and that's something that they want to see because you're going to be a remote worker. Most of the time, you're probably going to be a remote worker. And so they want to see that you have, the really strong morals for yourself and really strong values to your work ethic. So if you can say, I was working really hard on this despite the pandemic, and I got this project completed, or I started this project, in late spring or sometime, during the pandemic, that's a great thing to say. So if they ask that, yes, they are allowed to ask you about that, but make sure that your response is not just something you thought of on the spot. Make sure it's something that really shows yourself off, make yourself shine, even though it's weird circumstances, you can still find a way through every little question that they can ask you to really make yourself shine.
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah.
My name is Amelia. I'm a senior also, and like Emily, I'm also dealing with, going into grad school and the application process. Something that has been coming up is working more on international teams. And so I was wondering if you had any advice as to how to kind of manage between, saying I really want to work, with you and, at a really cool opportunity, but also being mindful that there are some differences that may arise, and how to kind of mitigate that.
Great question. So if you are in that position where you are talking about something like that, where you would be working with people overseas or even on the West Coast, because that's still a big time change, you want to talk about your organization skills. So talk about what tools you use to keep yourself on time for everything, early for things, So let's say your Google Calendar or your calendar on Outlook, something like that. Or if you say, I love using my agenda and I make sure that I never miss a meeting so that, even in certain circumstances where I would be working with people where our schedules are just crazy and completely, out of sync, you can still prove that you are organized and you are reliable. So if you're in that situation where you could be working with an international team, you want to make sure that your project management skills are shown on your resume and in your interviewing, and your organization skills are just in tip-top shape. And you want to not just say, don't just say, well, I'm really good with organization and I have really great organization skills. What does that mean? That means nothing. Anybody could say that. You want to talk about the specifics of that.
Awesome, ladies. Thank you so much for attending the clinic. I really hope that you learned and that you enjoyed it. Please vote, first of all, but then also vote on the Instagram page and let me know if you want to have a makeup tutorial next week. And be safe and be healthy. And thank you again so much.